Hi viewers, welcome back to the Anand studio. We have today Rami Desai, who is a political analyst, an author, expert on the Northeast, and she's a panelist in a lot of TV channels. You might have seen her, and the list goes on. Okay, it will take half an hour for me to really go through all her achievements and whatever she has done already. Okay, achieved. So today we'll be talking to her about her recent article on the Brown Sahib Syndrome and other related topics. Right? Namaste, Ramiji, for joining me.
Namaste, Anandji. Thank you. As usual, what a lovely introduction. I find it hard to believe it's me.
You've done
But,
so much. I'm not able to read that out quite a lot.
Anand, nobody knows everything. Nobody is an expert. I feel, especially me, I'm a learner. And I always, the more you learn, the more you feel that you have so much more to learn. So, I think I will remain a perennial learner. But thank you very much for inviting me on your show, and it's great to be here again.
My honor. So the first question for you, Rami, what is this Brown Sahib Syndrome that you wrote about?
So, Anant, this was an article that you're referring to that came out recently, but it's something that I've spoken about many times before. I had also spoken about this in last year's India Ideas Conclave, where I had associated this tag to a personal experience of mine. Um, what I mean by saying it is, first of all, let me be clear, it's my understanding of it. Others may not agree with me, but what I believe is that there is this syndrome that we suffer from. We still suffer. It was a lot more acute before, and it is the Brown Sahib syndrome, wherein there is a class of people in India who have emulated the West. And the reason that they've emulated the West, it has its moorings in history. When the British were in India, when we had been colonized, the British found it difficult to bridge this gap between the local Indian and themselves. There were language barriers, there were cultural barriers, there were all sorts of barriers. They particularly created a class of people who were like them in their culture, in their civilization, in their language, in their understanding of society, who were put in places of high positions, administrative positions, academic positions, who essentially became the interlinking group of people between the colonialists and the local Indian. And these are the people that were the original Brown Sahibs because they were brown in color and they emulated the white man in their mannerisms, in their thought process, in their ideas. Um, these are the same Brown Sahibs who also created some of the lenses that we are still grappling with. And by lenses, I mean how we view situations. So, for example, how we view the caste system, how we view the religion, how we view our society, and how we view even regions. For example, the Aryan invasion theory.
Yeah.
It was a completely concocted theory. It has its rootings in British colonial anthropology. It was cemented by uh, the Brown Sahibs that were either created by the British or uh, other Indians who were associated with them. It was this entire fraudulent theory pushed forward by them. Why? Because it pleased their masters. Why? Because we created this psychological deficit where we felt that, oh, the white man is smarter, more civilized than us. If we want to be developed, if we want to be rich, if we want to be considered educated, our level of standardization has to be compared with the white man.
Yeah.
And the people who assign to this idea are the Brown Sahibs. Now, one would think once the colonialists left that, the Brown Sahibs left with them. No, these people, like I said, were put in positions of power, which eventually, because of the dispensation we had, because of the subsequent governments after the British had left, we had their own ideology. These people remained, their children remained, their inner circle remained in these positions of power. And these positions of power were not just the administration, but was academia, was media, hence creating and cementing this idea of that the Indian, the Bharatiya, that as we have now started calling ourselves, should not be proud in their own culture, in their own civilization, in their own religion. We have to look towards the West for direction, and that everything that comes from the West is acceptable, including their blessings.
Mhm.
So, this is essentially what I mean by the Brown Sahibs. And as I mentioned in my article, we still have them. We have people like Veer Das. We have so many people like this. I mean, these people held, people like Ramanath Harper and others held the mantle earlier on. Now we have this new generation that still feels that we need to play to the West. We need their acceptance, in whatever we do. And that, I think, is really disrespectful to oneself, to one's society. It is also absolutely shameful that you need to do this. So I
Yeah,
hope that
and to your
answers your
point, it has
question.
not gone away yet, right? It's been so many years, but still this whole syndrome is there out there, okay? Especially people when they go to the West or some interactions happen, this thing comes out. Even there are articles being written from which this whole syndrome again shows up on and off. And do you think this is triggered much more now and is much more visible after 2014, after Modiji came?
Um, Anand, I don't think this is a lot more visible. I think um, uh, if I was to be honest, I really think that this attitude has lessened. We've been able to claim our civilizational pride post 2014. We have gotten space. We've got platforms. There were people like myself, so many others like you, who assigned to who assigned to this idea of Bharat, but were never had the opportunity to speak about it, never had visibility. Today we have that visibility because the government is in power. On the contrary, pre 2014, it was the Brown Sahibs who dominated all these spaces. They not only dominated it unofficially, they dominated it officially. They were the toast of the town. They were creators of this narrative. They were given platforms, they were given money, they were given opportunities. They moved even one step ahead of the Brown Sahib syndrome and became whiter than the whites. So they had all these multiple issues going on, and these issues, which we see as issues, deeply seated issues in inferiority, in civilizational crisis. These issues were given power because they had the political power, because they had the intellectual power. So I actually think after 2014, and we must be grateful for it, that not only have we had the opportunity, but a lot of people that I see today speaking up who were closed door subscribers to this idea of civilizational pride have now come out in the open. They have gotten that courage and they have gotten those opportunities to do so.
Definitely. So earlier, like you pointed out, before 2014, all right, the Brown Sahibs were themselves in power. Okay, they were themselves kind of enjoying that whole power that they have and all that, right? But now, post 2014, they don't have it. And that's where the noise is coming a lot more from them in different forums. That's the way I look at it. Right after Modiji came, there's so much of things written about, oh, this is not, this is like this, that is like that. Okay. And in your words, the Brown Sahibs have really gotten active, and they are kind of desperate in kind of speaking out about this whole thing, right? So that's what I meant, pre 2014 versus post 2014.
No, you're quite right. And that's why I bring it down to political power. A lot of times I have engaged in this little discussion on whether political power is important for civilizational upliftment or not. And I have always come from the point of view, and I continue to come from the point of view, that political power is extremely important because of the openings and the positions that it gives to people who are change makers. And unless that is there, those positions are not available. Unless you are able to change things, on a very, very strategic level, administrative frameworks, academia, scholarship, you're not going to really be able to make long term changes. And I think, that's the opportunity that 2014 brought us. And I think with many more years ahead of us, which I think is quite clear to a lot of us, this is only going to be cemented, and it's only going to give more upcoming intellectuals or academics or opportunities for change. But yes, to answer your question, yes, you're right. That is the reason that a lot of these brown sahibs, a lot of these people with the syndrome, are now getting hassled. Now they feel that their positions of power are in threat, that they have a lot to lose, that money resources are running out, opportunities are running out. There is a very strong narrative that is being built to counter the lies that they have peddled for decades.
Definitely. And that's where I believe that they are really flustered when they see that India is trying to assert itself more as a Bharat now. Okay, India, that is Bharat. Okay, so they are not able to kind of digest that fact, and that's why so much of noise is coming from different quarters, I would think.
Correct, because they look down upon Bharat. India is what they can relate to. They can't relate to Bharat, because what happens with this whiter than the whites attitude, what happens with this Brown Sahib syndrome, is that you look down upon whatever is natural to you. You look down upon yourself and what your roots are. So if you look at a Veer Das, Veer Das would never be this grateful, would never be this happy to be standing in India International Center or a Kamani Auditorium or a Delton Hall or, even for that matter, Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium, as he was standing at the Kennedy Center. He would never ever do a show in, let's say, Nigeria. He would not be interested in doing a show even in South Africa. Where he would want to do a show is in America, in the UK, in France. These are the countries he wants to appeal to. He would never want to go to Indonesia. So, one has to look at, one has to look at them, really just very sympathetically, I believe, because this sort of brainwashing one would expect, one would have overcome with India now really standing its ground in, in world politics or world literature or world cinema. I think India has created its own position and continues to strengthen it and will do so. And you would think that people like this would have learned a thing or two from there, or would have gained some amount of confidence. This is nothing but a lack of confidence. This is an inferiority complex that they deal with, where they think that they have to appeal to the white man. The white man has to accept them for them to feel that they are successful. India is a country of 1 billion people, the second largest youth population in the world, I think, after China, if I'm not mistaken. If that is the case, why would you not be appealing to us? Because you want a pat on the back by the white man, because India is changing and India is not accepting this rubbish any longer.
Yeah, and in the article, I saw that somebody went to the extent of saying that India is no more a democracy. Right?
Of course, this is a popular statement. If you read any of these international newspapers, magazines, they use words like fascism. It's an autocratic country. It doesn't have any democracy. So frivolously, do they know what fascism is? Do they know how an autocracy works? Do they know how it is to be a part of that kind of functioning? Because if they did, if they really understood these ideologies, if they understood these words, they'd be able to draw a distinction with what is happening in India freely. Veer Das can go speak like this abroad and still come back and feel safe in this country. Not be harassed, not be treated badly, not be discriminated against, because he lives in a vibrant democracy. And like I have said in that article, it is absolutely shameless. I don't have any other word for it. That the people mostly writing these articles are Indians. It's not the white man writing these articles. Unfortunately, these are Indians who are writing these articles, who have, a lot of them have, used this country for what it had to offer, have used its subsidized education, has used the kind of safety and, the kind of multiculturalism we have in this country to go and settle abroad. And once they've settled abroad, they want to badmouth India because that's how they retain their jobs. Crisis journalism, crisis conversation, always seeing monsters where there are none to be seen, has become the culture of this century. And it is absolutely, to me, it is actually scary, because what is this legacy that we are leaving the youth in this country, that, create grievances? And I know it's not limited to this country. The world is dealing with this crisis culture. But what are we talking about? What is the legacy? Oh, talk about grievances, talk about crisis, create red flags where there are none. That is what will get you ahead in life. So everybody now is micro analyzing grievances. On the contrary, we are such a I find we are such a strong civilization that in the face of adversity, we somehow manage to remain happy. You look at a poor person, I'm not saying his life is happy, I'm not saying that his life should be the way it is, but you look at a poor person in India, that person will still have some amount of joy on his face, will still carry on, will still greet you with a smile. That is our civilization. Our civilization is greater than consumerism. Our civilization is greater than what it has taught us is, to carry on, to work through our problems, to see the larger universal design. And that, unfortunately, because of people like this, unfortunately, that isn't getting the position that it should, because these people are just, depressing. I mean, this is the last thing we need in this day and age, is such depressive conversation. Veer Das has an opportunity in the platform that he does to talk about the kind of advances that Bharat has made. Instead, he chooses to disappoint us like this. He chooses to disappoint an entire country of people, wherein, to please a handful of people, there is no forgiveness. There should be no forgiveness for people like this.
Agree. And see, nowadays, I think even the stand-up comedy bit, right, has taken a very different kind of a shape, right? It's not comical anymore, to me, at least, right? The comedy that I like is, it's more of, okay, you look at it in a lighter vein, and that makes you laugh. But nowadays, it really makes you angry. What are they talking about a country, about the civilization and all that, and calling that as a comedy or just for fun?
Absolutely. You don't know statistics? You are talking frivolously about rape? Is that a comic act? What is funny about it?
Yep.
Rape, it can never be a joke. It can never be spoken frivolously. And this entire idea that, humor, surpasses, can surpass all lines, and, everything can be, made humorous, is nonsense. Everything cannot be made humorous. Do you know what saying things like this does? Veer Das, he spoke about this great, analogy of two Indias, which in itself is absolutely ridiculous, because I don't know which India he lives in. This India that he lives in, like I've written in my article, is clearly a parallel universe, because I don't associate to it, and majority of Indians don't associate to it. Clearly, he's not done his homework. What are the statistics? What do statistics tell us? Please go and check the statistics of rape in Sweden. Please go and check the statistics of rape in South Africa. Those are the top of the list. India is not even in the top 5. So, what are you talking about? And how is it that you think it's okay to? It's like your Karnataka MP yesterday. Talking about rape, talking about it frivolously, then expecting us to look at it in context. No, I'm sorry, it can never be a joke, because it has a lot of repercussions. First of all, people of influence, whatever said and done, Veer Das has an audience. He can be considered a person of influence. This MP, is an elected representative. He is a powerful man. He can be called a person of influence. When you make light of such serious issues, you embolden rapists.
Exactly.
You embolden criminals. You embolden people to say, Arey, apna, if people like this who have such large fan followings, if they think it's okay, then what is wrong with it? You can never, ever give that impression to anybody that any of this is okay. Number two, what about somebody who's been a victim? Do you know the kind of trigger points that your language has? The kind of emotional consequences that a victim will have to go through because of what you're saying, and the kind of humor that you are using this for. Number three, this also discourages people, women who are already, deal with this pressure that, maybe rape is my fault, who deal with this pressure of being a victim of something so heinous, which they shouldn't. That discourages them from going and reporting it, because what will they say? That people will only laugh at it. So, this is what is really important. People like this, for their career, for money, for furthering their profession, will use anything, will use crisis journalism without looking at the repercussions that it will have. And I think that is really unfortunate, because, and that also tells us that they don't subscribe to what our civilizational values are, because our civilizational values have always been rooted in empathy, in compassion, in forgiveness, in understanding, in things that they don't understand.
Exactly. And that's why everybody has to really be conscious about, and they have to again select what they are listening to, what they are following, and all that. Okay, everybody should start thinking about this whole thing, introspect, right? So you cannot just go ahead and support everything in the name of a joke or stand-up comedy and all that. And even the language sometimes, right? So I don't sometimes even laugh at all this. Sometimes the language in the name of comedy, or I'm going to say stand-up, it's a kind of a template, right? You have to use foul language to be to show your humor in the stand-up comedy shows.
Because you don't have a vocabulary large enough. That's why you have to use language like this. Maybe if they read a little more, and maybe if the vocabulary was wider, they could, lean on some more respectable words than they do. We are going through this churn where we are very clearly identifying these people, and we are very, we are able to judge them clearly. Having said that, I think these are only a small group of people, these sort of influencers. What really needs to change is people on ground. I'll give you an example. When we talk about Brown Sahibs, when we talk about this sort of humor, it's all rooted in the same thing, is we are cooler because we can be self-critical and we can lambast our own culture and our civilization. It makes us far more democratic, even if we don't have any knowledge. And we sound more educated. So this is, again, the Brown Sahib Syndrome. So the example I want to give you is, um, uh, I was having a conversation with this girl, and highly social and educated abroad, and has lived in Paris, has lived in London, is an Indian, comes back and is having this discussion with me. And I understand everybody doesn't need to be a reader, everybody doesn't need to be a scholar, but your basic opinions have to be based in some sort of knowledge. Otherwise, what's the point of having an opinion? So I was talking to her, and she was saying, "Oh my God, it's so embarrassing to have a government like this. And it's so embarrassing to have a prime minister like this." And I said, "Really? And why would you have such strong feelings? Why do you think so?" She says, "Because, he doesn't speak English properly, and he speaks English in this vernacular, with this vernacular Hindi accent." I was shocked. Of course, I was appalled, but more than that, I was shocked, because this sort of complex, how do you change? And this is a common person, this is not somebody who's involved in any of these areas that we're involved in.
Yeah.
So I said, the Japanese premier speaks only Japanese, doesn't speak English. The Russian, the Chinese, the French, the English. How come that isn't a problem for you?
Yeah.
But this is a problem for you. And obviously, there wasn't any response to this. But this was a point of study for me, because this is what a common man thinks. A common man thinks that your civility, your sophistication can only be measured by the Western lens, that we don't have any measure for it. On the contrary, it is our measure. If we are truly a confident country, if we are truly a civilization coming into its own, we have to create our own measures. It is us who should be measuring, because we come from one of the most sophisticated, one of the oldest, one of the most evolved civilizations in the world.
Yep.
And why should I be embarrassed to say that? And why should I have to be self-critical? I don't need to be self-critical. I don't want those brownie points where I have to, get brownie points on the basis of how critical I can be of my own civilization. I have no need to do that. I will focus on the positive, and everything else that needs to be fixed will be fixed by the virtue of us coming into our own.
Definitely. I think India has changed quite a lot. Okay, and seeing Mr. Modi in action, a lot of youth have really got this confidence now. They are not thinking about their flashy English, right? It's more about how they are going to articulate, how they're going to show their content, right? And the values. That's more important than just the language speaking that great, right? I remember Mr. Sanjay Baru wrote a book around the same lines, right? Things have changed. Earlier, it was all this great English, people from Harvard or wherever the universities talking great English in the government and all that. Now things have changed. And I think that's how Bharat is evolving. And that's how India is becoming Bharat. Okay, so you don't have to really, English is a medium of communication only. Okay, so you don't have to judge a person based on his English. But our Prime Minister has gone to various parliaments in other countries, and he has got a standing ovation because of his ideas. Okay, it's not just about your English speaking skill, it's about the ideas that you bring onto the table, which other people are looking for. Isn't it? And that's what people are getting now.
I think basing somebody's judgment on such superficial things, on appearances, on how they dress, on language skills, is absolutely bringing down your own intelligence to the smallest of levels. It to me indicates that you don't have a thought process. It to me indicates that you have no insight into yourself, your civilization, you have no self-respect. So I think these are absolutely the wrong parameters to judge somebody. On the contrary, if people like this had a ounce of intelligence, they would be judging people on their values. They would be judging people on their knowledge of their own history, of their own civilization, on their strengths, and not on superficial things like this.
Yeah, yeah. And the common man understands that, or a common woman understands that. Okay, it's more of these, I think, the Brown Sahibs
The
don't go
brown
this far.
sahibs are the same. The brown sahibs are the same people who want to go and live in London and Paris for the culture that they have created, for the civilization they have created, for the society they have created, but don't want to create that same society in India.
Yeah.
Don't want to create that same civilization in India. What they go to London, Paris, New York. Oh my God, look at Rome. We went and saw the museums. We went and saw the Colosseum. We saw this. We saw that. How well they keep their history is what attracts these people. But they were in positions of power for so long. What did they do for the Archaeological Society of India? What did they do for our historical monuments? What did they do for our museums? Nothing. So at the end of the day, those are the same values that we are now trying to create, that you have admired in other countries, but you refuse to support us.
Yep. And
it's hypocrisy.
Yeah, and there's a trend, right? Recently also there was a lot of controversy around some ads coming from some brands, okay, around some festivals, right, and showing them in a poor light. So there's this trend now, either through the entertainment industry or through, say, some ads, which are not related to the actual product. Okay, so when you're showing something, be conscious of what points you really want to drive through that, right? So what do you think about that? There's a linkage here, I would think.
So, yes, like I said, it is a part of our subconscious. I don't think the common man, the advanced, the more anglicized youth is, that's sitting behind the computer, working in design or working in, the advertising industry. I don't think it comes naturally to them that how maybe a misrepresentation of our culture, which is related to something that's very sentimental to us, which is festivals, can be offensive. I just don't think it's in their imagination, and I think it will come in their imagination once. Once we really reclaim our civilizational history, we really claim our civilizational strength, which we don't have right now. And an urban city youth will be very different to somebody from a rural area in the way they think. And I think that gap has to be bridged. Having said that, and I'll say something that may sound a little unpopular and may be a little unpopular, but this is what I think. We should also avoid hyperactivism. We have to choose our battles. The reason we have to choose our battles is because you do not want to resign yourself to just being people who have political power today, who have civilization power today, who have social media power today, as being bullies. And it is important to also see it in the context of civilization. So everybody in Bharat does not follow the same culture. Yeah. Everybody in Bharat does not follow the same, maybe the same way of dressing. So, for example, everybody in Bharat does not wear a bindi. If you go to the tribes, if you go to tribal areas, their appearances can vary. So one has to be very, very aware of not sidelining parts of our culture and our civilization and our own people. We have to always be very, very aware of the kind of diversity that we have amongst ourselves, amongst Hindus, within Sanatan Dharma, within, within our culture, in our civilization. There are people who in the north may follow something, in the south may follow something, in Banwasi areas may follow something, in the northeast may follow something. So one has to be careful what are the issues that we pick up and when do we pick up those issues. But of course, I think advertisers, I think public media people have to be aware of being sensitive to our civilization's leanings. For example, if I was to give you an example, let's say we talk about firecrackers. You know, there is this standard blanket sort of narrative that, oh my God, firecrackers cause pollution, firecrackers cause pollution. It has nothing to do with that. It's one day in the year, 2 days in the year, okay, fine, 5 days in the year, right? Where we associate it to one of the greatest events of our civilization. You have to be sensitive to that. You cannot erase um, you cannot erase such sort of sentimentality. It will be disruptive to the society, it will be disruptive to the future and to our culture.
Yep, yep. And not just that. Look at so much of, I'm going to say in Shivakasi, there's so much of production happening. Now, if you are going to stop crackers, then in such a case, what's going to happen to the economy of that place, right? And what's going to happen to those producers who have actually produced so much? And recently, again, I'll give you an example in Tamil Nadu, during Ganpati festival, okay, suddenly they banned it. Right? They told, okay, everybody should pray in their houses and all that. Something like that happened. There were a lot of people who are the idol makers, right? Okay, their business got hit a lot, right? So it's not just the ritual, but it's again so many people, their livelihoods are attached to this. Okay, we have to be
Absolutely.
sensitive about that.
By virtue of us being an ancient civilization, we have evolved processes that have been egalitarian in nature, that have taken along with it complete communities, have taken along with it the entire society. That's why you see a temple is not just a temple for us, it's a whole society. It's a temple town. Economy depends on it, livelihoods depend on it, culture depends on it. For example, Kashi Vishwanath, it's one of the most important temples to us, one of the most important Jyotirlings in the world. That's why it's called Vishweshwar. But there has been so much of criticism against that. On the contrary, what it opens up to us is it opens up another avenue to support our economy, the whole domestic tourist trail, which is far larger than the international tourism that comes in. And it not only opens up and provides for domestic tourism, but also for the Buddhist. And it is so important, Anant, because you see, when we talk about the Buddhist tourism trail, we're not only talking about Buddhist domestic tourism, but there is an entire untapped block of people in Southeast Asia that are Buddhists that consider all their important places of pilgrimages being in India. So you also open doors for them.
Yep, yep. So talking about Kashi Vishwanath Mandir, so what do you think Modiji has sent out a message through the Kashi Corridor to the Brown Sahibs of the world?
Oh dear, he sent out a message and how. But let me say this, it is also not just to Brown Sahibs of the world, it is to every Hindu, it is to us, it is to Indians. Because what this project, and it's a mammoth project, and I don't think people understand, it's not just about redeveloping the temple itself, which, like we discussed before, I have been there and I was so excited because as we would be to go to a temple of such significance, to be able to visit Mahadev. And I was so excited, and I'd never been there before, and I had all these ideas in my head of how it would be, and it would be so grand. And here I am walking through these chota gullies. I reach there, there's barely any space to stand. I barely get a glimpse of my God for about, I maybe was able to stand there for about 2 or 3 seconds. And when you go to places of importance like this, um, being in meditation for a few minutes is really important. It comes naturally to us. We all do it when we go. There was no place to sit there. Now, what he has done is not only has he expanded it, wherein one can visit at peace, one can sit there, one can reflect on one's life, on the Mahadev himself, and one has that space to be able to concentrate, but also has created pathways that lead to the temple, that are in sync with the kind of respect that we should be according our gods, that we should be according our most important places of worship, or any place of worship. He has created buildings that are specifically for tourism that will be coming in, which are for their stay, for places where they can eat, places where there's a museum. These are basics of any tourist town. This is what should have been done 50 years ago, but unfortunately it wasn't. Uh, the area has been cleaned up. We always complain, oh, especially our towns of pilgrimages are so dirty. They're so dirty because there hasn't been any infrastructure. Nobody's bothered about the infrastructure. So, what he has given us is an event in history. We are going to be remembering this day long after this gossip and this politics has gone. Nobody is going to remember what these Brown Sahibs said about it. Nobody is going to remember what the critics said about this. What they are going to remember is 2021 was the year that Kashi changed. 2021 was the year that the Mother Ganga could see Vishwanathji again. So you see, the Ganges turns, and this is a local story there. It curves in such a way that in the olden days, it was said that both of them could look at each other. Now, with the illegal construction and encroachment of land, they couldn't see each other. So I think what has been created now, and I don't think we've given it the kind of importance, and we haven't shown the kind of joy that we should, is absolutely historical. And this is why Kashi will be remembered. And this is why I think this is the dawn of a new era.
Yeah, and Kashi has got so much of a historical relevance for Bharat. Okay, it's not just a temple place, all right? It has got a historical relevance, and that's what he told in his speech also that day, and that shows how advanced and how value-driven our culture was. Okay, in his speech itself, he mentioned about Subramania Bharati in the south, his poem on this, and all those things. Right, our culture has been so advanced and deep. Okay, so everybody has to really understand and feel proud about that. Our civilization has been very inclusive and definitely secular for a long time. Only this word is getting harped around. Okay, but the value system is so great, which every Indian and Bharati has to feel proud of. All right, with that, Rami, thank you so much for your time today and a great discussion. I learned a lot from you again today, as usual. So we'll talk again.
Thank you, Anand, for calling me. And it was a wonderful discussion. And it was, I think, very relevant to what's happening nowadays. So thank you for inviting me. And I hope to be again on your show soon.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Take care.